Hi, everyone, and good morning to you. It's a Friday, and I hope you've had a fantastic and productive week and that you are on your way to achieving your KPIs for the month and the year. All right. For the sake of those who may not know who I am, um, I am Kondwani Chirwa, a Zambian librarian and researcher, and I work with catalogues and classification, and this has been my bread and butter for the past 9 years. And I've seen how the way we label books or information artifacts can quietly shape what stories get told and which ones get hidden. Imagine you are a Zambian student and looking for information on African history. So you go to the library, search the catalog, and you find the books, yes, but they are shelved under a label that says primitive cultures. That's not just a harmless mistake, that's the result of a deeper issue because classification systems are not neutral. They carry the biases of the people who created them and the times in which they were created. So in this video, I want to show you classification how classification choices shape what we find, how we see ourselves, and even whose voices we hear in the first place. And I'll try to use both global and Zambian examples, okay? But what do we mean by classification? Okay, classification, simply put, is how we arrange materials into groups or into categories so they are easier to find. In libraries, we use tools or systems to do this arrangement, to do this classification. We use tools like the Library of Congress classification or LCC and the Dewey Decimal Classification or DDC. These are the two most common tools that are used here in Zambia. Okay, so on the surface, it looks like it's just neutral organizing, like sorting socks by color. But the truth is, classification hides a quiet kind of power. Someone decides what goes where, which terms are official, and which topics are grouped or left out entirely. And here's the thing, classification is never created in a vacuum. Classification is a reflection of a worldview, okay? So these systems that we use were developed mainly in Western contexts during colonial and imperial eras. That means they reflect the cultural assumptions of that time and place. So those assumptions show up in value judgments, where one religion, for example, gets a full shelf of numbers and another is tucked in a corner, or where African history is described through the lens of European exploration. Okay, and when something is mislabeled or placed under a dismissive heading, you might never even find it, or you might feel discouraged from engaging with it. Okay, let me just give a few examples. The Library of Congress sub-classification system once used terms like Hottentots. That's the Library of Congress subject headings. It once used terms like Hottentots for the Khoikhoi people. And that language is now widely recognized as offensive. Political topics were framed in loaded ways, like the term illegal aliens, which only changed after years of pushback. Then there was African history. African history is often catalogued as though it only began when Europeans arrived, under headings like African discovery, Africa discovery and exploration. Okay, so the Dewey Decimal Classification system also gives Christianity the lion's share of space in the religion section, while every other faith, every other religion gets lumped into other religions rather. And African literature also is often found away as other literatures. It is not given equal weight to Western literature, for example. And African history has sometimes been grouped as a subcategory of European colonial history. And so this is not just a somewhere else problem, it is here too in Zambia. Okay, in some Zambian library catalogues, you will see the term or the heading Northern Rhodesia as a subject heading instead of Zambia. Okay, which means you might miss modern works if you don't know the colonial name. Some older records use colonial era spellings or derogatory labels for ethnic groups. And in the religion section, Christianity often dominates, with local traditional beliefs sidelined. Even something like Zambian independence might be buried under British colonies, Africa, rather than clearly listed as Zambia history independence. So, why does this matter? You might be thinking, so what? The book is still there, right? But here is the problem. If you can't find it, you can't use it. Misclassification hides and misrepresents knowledge, especially local knowledge. The words used in catalogues influence how communities see themselves in scholarship. And when certain perspectives are consistently privileged over others, it reinforces old power imbalances. Okay, we can do better. Zambian libraries can adapt the LCC or DDC to reflect local realities and histories. Okay, we can collaborate with other African catalogers to develop inclusive subject headings. And most importantly, we can keep revising because language and perspectives change and our systems should keep up. So here's the takeaway. Classification is never neutral. It shapes what we find, how we see it, and even whether we see it at all. Okay? So to my fellow librarians and information professionals in Zambia, let's review our systems. Let's make sure our shelves and our catalogs tell African stories on African terms. And to everyone watching, next time you search a library catalog, don't just ask, where is this book? Ask, why is it here? Okay. Those are my brief thoughts for today. I hope this has prompted you to think about revising the classification systems that you have, adapting them at least to suit the local contexts that we operate from. Thank you. This has been Kondo Anichira, and thank you for watching this video. Bye.